another episode of The Quiet Dream. We're loving counting down towards the Milano Cortina 2026 Olympic Winter Games and diving a little bit deeper into every sport that will make the Games one of the great spectacles of 2026 and a truly elite sporting event, but also cultural phenom, and 2.5 weeks of just brilliant entertainment across those Olympic Winter Games. And today we're looking at speed skating, a sport that Australia won't be represented in at Milano Cortina, but a sport that Australia has quite a strong history in across various Olympic Winter Games. There is a young Australian, 20-year-old Luke Zelloff, who has been doing some decent things at a World Juniors level, and we hope that his progression continues and that Australia can continue to produce some elite speed skaters. But at Milano Cortina, there won't be any Australians competing in that sport. It is a sport dominated by the Dutch and the US at the moment. Just been travelling around the US and North America, and their speed skating trials were on. The Dutch trials were on just before that. And in the Netherlands, speed skating is enormous. They pack out arenas. Their national trials were an enormous event, 3,000 people in and watching the legends of the sport every night. And in the US, in Minneapolis, they had the parents of a young phenom called Jordan Stolz. They had heart rate monitors on his parents to see how they were going. But geez, they are excited about Jordan Stolz in the US, and 21 years of age, dominating the sprint and middle distances. And he is featuring across primetime NFL broadcasts. They have a huge campaign to showcase their athletes. It was fascinating traveling around North America and diving into a little bit about that winter sports climate and just how fired up they are about not just Jordan Stolz, but their athletes for Milano Cortina as well. So great to see the broadcast of that. But the Dutch and the US are the two powerhouses in speed skating at the moment. And our guest today is Gavin Day, who is a sports broadcaster, reporter, and commentator, and has been commentating speed skating for the World Feed for some time now, and is passionate about the sport and a huge amount of knowledge on that. So it's developed as a sport off the back of a mode of transportation in frozen areas, lakes, rivers, and getting around. So it makes sense that Canada and the Netherlands and climates like that really do thrive in the sport and have that rich history. It made its Olympic Winter Games debut at Chamonix in 1924. The women's events were added at Lake Placid in 1932. It's a 400-metre long track. The fastest ice in the world is in Salt Lake City, where more world records have been set. And you can, if you're ever in Salt Lake City, drop in and skate at certain times around that ice, which is also the Utah Olympic Oval, where Stephen Bradbury won his short track speed skating gold medal in the men's 1,000. So it was great to be there for that, but that is a story for another day. Be there for that, I mean, seeing that ice firsthand. But 7 events for men and 7 events for women at Milano Cortina. The 500 metres, 1,000, 1,500 and 3,000 metres for women. And then the 5,000 metres for men and 10,000 as well. There's a mass start and a team pursuit for each gender. And depending on the format, it's either a race against the clock or a race against fellow competitors. So it's a sport going through a bit of a transformation with some of the marquee names and the superstars in their respective markets that we look forward to watching, which includes Jordan Stolz for the US, a name who we'll look forward to seeing. But iconic performances are in Schulting, won 3 gold medals at Beijing 2022, a superstar who has retired. Irene Wust and Sven Kramer of the Netherlands, Bonnie Blair, Eric Harden of the USA, all of these names from the past who are no longer competing. So exciting times for the sport of speed skating, and we may as well dive in and get a good insight into what to look out for. Speed skating is one of the more enjoyable Winter Olympic sports, I think, for a lot of casual sports fans when they discover the Olympic Winter Games and find out some of the different sports and try and get their head around exactly what's going on and just how big that lactic acid buildup is for some of the world's best speed skaters. And our guest today to chat all things speed skating and the Olympic Winter Games is Gavin Day, who is one of the foremost voices for speed skating in the world, as well as short track as well. But from a speed skating perspective, calls a lot of the races and a voice you'll be able to hear if you tune in to any of the speed skating on the regular World Cup circuit. Gavin is based in Canada and in Toronto. And Gavin, a very warm hello. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. That is quite the introduction I have to live up to now.
Well, I'm sure you'll do it quite comfortably. Gavin, speed skating is one of those pure Winter Olympic sports. It started in terms of as an activity from a mode of transport and has accelerated from there. It's been dominated by the Dutch and the Americans, the Canadians, and the traditional winter sports nations, as you can imagine. Why do you love speed skating?
That's a very good question to start things off. I mean, for me, I think when everyone thinks of the Canadian stereotypes, they automatically think of ice hockey. I never played it. I'd watch it a bit, but I was never huge on it. And I think for me, speed skating for me sort of came, like a lot of people during the Olympics, and Canada had a couple good runs there, some very good sprinters like Katrina Lemay-Doan, Susan Ock, some very good sprinters. But then I think I remember Lillehammer 94, where Johan Olaf Koss, the great Norwegian, just brought the nation to its feet. And I remember kind of images because I would have been 94. Let's see, dating myself, not even 10 yet. But I just remember the man in the bright red suit winning all these races, and that Hamar oval in Norway just lighting up, and he just and from there I was the guy who was watching the events between the games, and an event like speed skating, it becomes prominent in those every 4-year cycles. But then, of course, you discover that the athletes compete in between the games. And I was a guy who'd be checking out the World Cup races, and I just became fascinated by it. And I was living in Ottawa, the national capital at the time, and I didn't think there was any way to kind of do it. It just became a sport that I just enjoyed watching. And as my career kind of started to get going in the media world, I was actually in a broadcast journalism program in Vancouver in the run up to 2010 while I was freelancing, stringing for the Wire Service, the Canadian Press. And I let it known that I liked these events, and I was keen to cover a lot of the test events. And eventually they asked me to be part of their 2010 coverage team, reporting team. And so my first Olympics was in 2010, covering long track speed skating. It was just kind of full circle moment where, a sport that I enjoyed watching as a kid, suddenly I'm there at an Olympics, and I'd gotten to know a lot of the Canadian athletes too in the run up, and good people, which of course you're always what you're hoping for in journalism, good people whose stories you can tell. And it's always just kind of, there had been ebbs and flows where times where I'm paying more attention to it, but it's just kind of always threaded its way in and out of my life. And now it's a bigger part of it. And I love, getting to take part in it and calling it and all that. And so it's just kind of been there. And just right place, right time that I get to call these races now.
The Olympic Winter Games is the centerpiece of the sport, and it's one of the great things about most of the Winter Games sports. It is the absolute pinnacle for these athletes and the sport itself. The Milano Speed Skating Stadium is a temporary venue. It's being converted. The ice has been built. A lot's been made about some of the venues, but this is a venue that will revert back to its exhibition centre status. But with the Italian fans for speed skating and its proximity to Europe, what are you expecting from the venue in Milan, the northwest of Milan, but also the atmosphere, given Italy's recent history in speed skating?
Well, I mean, I expect a healthy mix of orange and red to be in the crowd. I imagine the Dutch fans will hop down. I imagine the Norwegian fans will travel down. But, you need to just look back to Torino in 06 and Enrico Fabrice just getting the home fans. He was sort of that guy who peaked at the right time and got those results and got the Italian fans going. And I mean, you can see a guy like Davide Giotto, the great distance skater, if he gets his moment, I mean, he's got his challengers now this year, some youngsters coming up. But I mean, if there's an Italian skater who can get up there, and I look at Giotto obviously, but Francesca Lollobrigida is a world champion and someone who's been around the sport for so long, and so. But yeah, I imagine, like I said, a lot of Dutch, a lot of Norwegians. But the cool thing about particularly the Dutch fans and any fan in this sport is you get cheered for regardless of your nation. And so, I always point to the Dutch fans as they're the ones who come out in such great numbers, and they'll be aware if a skater's on a fast time or if someone's putting up a challenging time. And so I just expect the fact that it's in Italy, that it's so central and so easily accessible to many countries that, I hope, I don't know what to fully expect, but I hope that will create indelible images, and sounds, and make it a great event, because like you said, the Olympics is what it's all about. And so, there are fans who can create great atmospheres on World Cups and World Championships, but this is the time to put on the big show.
The Dutch are the rock stars of this sport. There's no hiding that. But the USA has a couple of superstars coming through too, and it seems like there's a changing of the guard, certainly on the men's side, in terms of some young superstars coming up. Jordan Stolz for the US has a lot of raps around him, and there's a young Dutchman who he has a bit of a battle with as well, Ning de Bowe, I believe. Where's the sport at, and who are some of these superstars we can look forward to seeing? Because Femke Kok on the women's side as well, and I mean the Dutch names continue as well. Even Schulting, who's done a lot of short track as well, is focusing on the long track too. But who are some of the superstars that the armchair fans can really look forward to seeing?
Yeah, Jordan Stolz has every potential to be the story of the games. The only guy to win 500, 1,000, 1,500 in a single world championships. He's done it twice. He's been an all-round champion. And so then just this year, he's throwing in some mass start, which is a relatively new event in long track. And so he could very well skate away with 4 gold medals. In the 5, the 1,000, and the 15, he is the knockdown, drag-out favorite in all 3. He is so tough to beat. And you mentioned Ning de Bowe. He's a guy who challenges in the sprint events, but Stolz always somehow finds a way to beat it. I think it was in Heerenveen earlier this season in the Netherlands where de Bowe put up a time and he was pumped about, and 1 pair later it was Stolz who goes around and beats him. And so, yeah, it was one of those, I think they showed de Bowe and he almost had one of those, what do I have to do to beat this guy? So the end of last season, I think Stolz got sick. He had some pneumonia. He had some other stuff, and he was suddenly proven to be human. But he's been, I think, just about unbeatable this season. And I did say in one of my commentaries, it seems only pneumonia can beat Jordan Stolz these days, because he's just that good. Like he's already in the mix for the greatest of all time. I know that's overused term, but he's a guy who sets track records in every place he goes. He wins all these World Cups. He wins all these World Championships. But once the Olympics happens, and if he does that same thing, I mean, he's still such a young guy, but he's just been spectacular. So he's number 1, at least on the men's side. On the women's side, yeah, you mentioned Femke Kok. She's so tough to beat in the sprints. I'm still waiting for Miho Takagi, the great Japanese kind of 1,000, 1,500 meter. She's not been at her best. She's been eminently beatable this season, but I just wait for her to see if she peaks at the right time. And then, they're the sentimental favorites in the longer distance. I look at the likes of Martina Sablikova of Czechia back for another games. She's just so consistent, but now she's sort of consistently just off the podium on World Cups. And so, but again, these strange things happen in Olympics, and athletes know when to peak, and some skaters wilt under the spotlight, but then we wait for some of those veterans like Sablikova, like Lollobrigida to peak at the right time. But I mean, the story of long track could just, I mean, it's Stolz that is the big one.
Yeah. Well, 21 years of age. It's a name everybody should get across, right? And really just embrace what he can achieve, but also the pressure the young man will be under in the US at the moment, and was watching their trials. And the host broadcaster had both of his parents with heart rate monitors on to see how they reacted. It's fun broadcasting, but this is what we're talking about in terms of a 21-year-old. So it's fun. The distances. So we start at 500 and then all the way up. I think it's 10,000 for the men. Is that right? So there's a fair spectrum, and I imagine it's difficult to be dominant across that marathon distance, for want of a better term, and that 500. The 500 is over quickly. We see enormous quads on these athletes as well. So what makes a good speed skater, and how difficult is it to be great across the multiple distances?
Well, that's it. I mean, the body of a 10,000 meter skater is completely different from a sprinter. Mm-hmm. You'll see a lot of sprinter. They're for lack of a better term, stockier guys for the most part. They could be. I mean, I think of the great Japanese speed skater Hiroyasu Shimizu going up against Jeremy Wotherspoon, the Canadian, and Wotherspoon is over 6 feet tall. Shimizu was this compact powerhouse, and so I mean, but you look at the guys who do the 10,000 meters and the women who do the 5,000, which is the longest women's race. And just almost a different body type. I mean, you're going to see if, I mentioned Davide Giotto, the Italian, if a young upstart Czech skater named Metode Jilek has burst onto the scene, and he's 18, 19, something like that. He's not an old skater, but he's lean as they come. I mean, it's almost like in cycling, where which of course is a natural crossover sport to long track, where you have your sprinters who are bigger and struggle to get over the mountains, whereas the mountain goats, the climbers are completely different body type. And so I think there's no coincidence that there's a lot of crossover between speed skating and cycling, and they also do a lot of cross training, speed skaters on bikes. And so that's the closest comparison for me.
In terms of these characters and the attention that they get, how big an occasion is this? We spoke about this being the pinnacle, but for the sport and these athletes, this is their moment, isn't it? And this can change lives in the various markets that they're from, because certainly from Australia, there's not been a representation of late on the international circuit. But from a global perspective, a big performance at a games like this does genuinely change lives, doesn't it?
Well, 100%. I mean, not every country is the Netherlands. I mean, that's a huge part of the culture there. I mean, people historically go out and skate on the canals, and relatively recently was in Amsterdam as part of my short track coverage, and I went out to the outdoor oval there, and it was packed. And I mean, in the Netherlands, it's almost because they skate for pro teams essentially, but you look at some of the other countries, and as good as the US or Canadian programs are, a lot of them have to spend money out of pocket. Like, they do not make enough money to make a full-on living. They have part-time jobs and this and that, but an Olympics is that time where they come good and they make their 15 minutes. If they win a medal, there's that window to lead to something else and set themselves up potentially for a post career if they know how to strike while the iron's hot, so to speak. But yeah, for these nations where representing their country is not a job, you almost have to pay to represent your country, even if you're among the best. This is the moment to potentially cash in.
From an equipment perspective, for people unfamiliar, the skates and the blades are a lot longer than what anyone would notice from general drop-in ice skating or hockey or figure skating or anything like that, or even short track to a degree. What's the equipment breakdown and the aerodynamics and the speed suits and things like that?
Yeah, so I think they keep some things under wraps, but you'll see they have the full skin suits with the hoods over top. They'll have glasses, essentially sunglasses. Most of them, actually. There are a few that opt to go without. I'm not sure what the aerodynamic loss is in there. I know there's one of the kind of top Polish sprinters right now. He's a guy who I've never seen wear any glasses. But yeah, then on down to the blades. There's sort of ankle guards that I believe they wear as well. particularly in an event like the team pursuit, which is similar to the track cycling team pursuit. I remember, I think it was a team that got punished because there was a bit of exposed skin around an ankle guard, and they didn't sort of pull down their skin suit well enough. So they take, there's a lot of safety involved there. But yeah, the blade, I mean, it's a boot. It's affixed to a long blade, as you mentioned, but it hinges at the toe, and so the heel is not locked in. It's a relatively recent introduction. I believe it might have been Nagano in '98 where they made their debut, called the clap skate, and they, for the longest time, the heel had been, like a short track skate, sort of attached to the blade. But I guess they discovered that when the heel can come up, that keeps the blade on the ice for fractions of a second each stride, and that all adds up, and that makes it that much faster. And so you'll hear it, especially off the line in a 500 meters. You hear the clap, 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 and that's the blade hitting the heel every time it comes up. And so it's completely different from your ordinary skate that you're going to get at the arena.
Yeah, and would a normal person be able to strap a pair of those skates on and be able to move?
It's also a completely different stride from figure skates or hockey skates. And my first, I'm a journalist by trade. My first TV radio job was actually in a place where we had an indoor oval, and I fulfilled a lifelong dream of joining the local club and learning how to skate.
Awesome.
And it was not clap skates there, but that same Amsterdam trip that I mentioned to you, I did take clap skates for the first time, and my body did kind of remember the stride, but you're sort of keeping your weight over the middle of your skates, and you're kind of pushing out to the side, and it's complicated to learn. Crossing over is a completely other skill because of course you have those long blades, and you have to get one out in front of the other, and you can't just hop into them and expect to skate like you would on hockey skates or figure skates. There's a bit of a process, but once you get it, you can build, and it doesn't take, I don't think, that long, but it's a process.
It'd be even worse, I think, than the first time any alpine skier or downhill skier, from a social perspective, puts on cross country skis, and you just the legs are going everywhere. So, fabulous stuff. And the circuit in between the Olympic Games, because from an Australian perspective, it can be followed through the internet, and the broadcast that's put out by the International Federation is terrific. And I encourage everyone to have a look in between and just have a good look at the variety and diversity of sport on offer. But what's the circuit like? I imagine it's very European and North American based with a little bit of Asia, but how strong is the circuit, and how can people follow that?
Yeah, so they sort of break it down into blocks. I mean, this season it started with 2 stops in North America. They went to Salt Lake City in Utah, and then to Calgary on the Canadian side, and then they went to a European kind of duo where they were in Heerenveen in the Netherlands, and then to Hamar in Norway. And they usually also add in 2 stops, Asian stops. Beijing has been a popular one. Where else has it been? Japan, I know, has hosted some. They have a couple of ovals there. There's one in Nagano, and then there's one up on Hokkaido, on the northern island up there. But I don't think they have stops this year, because coming out into January, there's a stop in Inzell in Germany. And there's a European Championships as well. And what the ISU's tried to do as well is have an event for the nations, obviously, that are not in Europe. And so, because it's almost like an extra competition when there's the European Championships. And so they've had something called the 4 continents, which they're trying to build up. But when it's everybody outside of Europe, you have Asia, North America, it's a lot of travel for an event like that. It's not so easy like in Europe to get to an oval on the continent. And so I think that they're still trying to figure out how to get more out of that event, because a lot of countries may not send their top athletes if it's a long way to travel. But it's generally a couple stops in North America, a couple in Europe, couple in Asia, all ending with, and there's still a lot of tradition in speed skating. So they kind of alternate between a world single distance championships, where there's all the individual events, and you're the single world champion for that distance. But then this year, there is they do, it's called an all round and a world sprint championships. And so with the sprint championships, that's one, of course, just for the sprinters, where they do a couple of 500s, a couple of thousands, and then kind of aggregate, combine all the times. And then the all rounds is one where they do 500 all the way up to the longest distance individually, 5,000 for women, 10,000 for men. They don't do all of them, but they do a couple shorter ones and a couple longer ones. And that's always fun because, you see long distance skaters doing a 500 meters. And it's the way they aggregate it. They calculate it. And so it usually all comes down to the last event, which is the 5K or the 10K, depending on men and women. But only the kind of the top 10 or something like that after the previous events get to race that last distance. And so, mention a guy like Jordan Stolz, he won the all round the last time. I think it was in Germany. And, he's not a guy who's often done 10Ks, but even then he put up a pretty decent 10K race that was competitive. But he knew going in that he had such a lead that if he just sort of skated a particular race, he won the all rounds. And there was a European Championships last year, which was an all round format. And it came down to that last long distance race, and there was one Norwegian who was better at the middle distance who was leading. But then when they did the 10K, it was his teammate who was better at longer distance who won the overall. And so, yeah, that's usually how they do it, where it's the single distances or the all rounds world sprint format. And this year it's that one. It's after the Olympics in the Netherlands, which will be great, where it's a world sprints and a world all round.
A nice opportunity for people to continue their appreciation for the sport post Milano Cortina. On that, what should people be looking for to enjoy the sport of speed skating the most? Because as we've spoken about, the sprint distance is pure power and precision and technique, and there's really no margin for error. Similarly, no real margin for error at the elite level for the longer distance, but much more of a build-up and that grace of the transitions and the arm sweeping and so forth. But how should people be following this to get the most out of it?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've learned calling the races is how to appreciate each distance for what it is. And I mean, calling a 5K or a 10K, it's a long race, but the one thing I've sort of noticed more is checking the split times and the lap times of various skaters. And you can see how different skaters skate different races. And then if a skater starts to see that lap time come down, it's like, oh, is this skater building something? And there have been some pretty exciting races, even in those long distance races, where someone starts quick, but then their lap times get so much slower and they get visibly more exhausted and are just hanging on for dear life to get a time they can be happy with. And so it's essentially just, for me, it's been learning that in those long distance races, each pair, each time the skaters are each race is a different story, and it's like starting anew when there's the next pair, and just appreciating that time to let a race breathe and happen and see how it develops. For the sprints, I mean, it's slapdash, it's very quick. Even the 1,000 meters, it's obviously twice as long as a 500, but skaters can fade really quickly. And if a skater goes out way too quick in the 1,000 or the 1,500 meters, you just watch that time just fall off a cliff. And and so it's even, but I think it can apply in the sprints as well, where you can just let the story, or let the race tell its own story. And the cool thing is there's time splits to let and there's all these comparisons to help even someone just tuning in to know, okay, this person is X amount of time ahead and behind, but they're losing speed or they're gaining speed or they're closing in. And so just take the most of all the graphics as well, because, I imagine in the old days where you couldn't tell what the time splits were. If you're just turning on a race, you have no idea what's going on. So the benefits of modern technology. But then there's the races like the team pursuit, which are completely different. There's going to be head-to-head two teams on the ice, and it's kind of a knockout format. And then mass start, which is one of those ones that, again, I've done some track cycling commentary, and it's kind of like a points race where there's a couple of intermediate sprints, but then it's really the big one at the end that it all comes down to. And I've kind of learned to appreciate that one too, where there's kind of tactics developing, where there's a skater that can break away off the front, and if they don't organize in the main field in the peloton, that skater can stay away, and you can get some surprising gold medals. It's not always going to be the favorite in mass start that comes away with it. And so just completely different from anything else that we've seen previously in speed skating.
Well, I can't wait, Gavin. The enthusiasm and expertise is unrivaled, and it's so very appreciated. And bring it on. Milano Cortina, the showcase for speed skating every 4 years, and one of the great Olympic events. We can't wait, and I'm sure you can't either. Thanks for your time.
Thanks so much. It's going to be enjoy the show, and I hope we get some new fans out of it.